And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Kuehl Show. I am your host today, the inside of the insiders, Tyler Kuehl. And yeah, guys, I know. I'm very up close today at the camera. The reason why is, for those that don't know, my new job over there at Locked On requires me to be more up close and personal with all of you. So for better or worse, this is what you're going to get here. But we got a lot to go on here today, here on 12 Ounce Sports, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Zingo TV, channel 761. We have preseason hockey starting up tonight, guys, and probably realized I should probably turn my mic on. My mic was off there on the video stream. If you want to catch my great intro, catch us on The Kuehl Show on your favorite YouTube channel, but it's okay. You just heard me ramble on for nonsense. It's okay. It's probably for the best, let's be honest. Here on 12 Ounce Sports, like I said, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Zingo TV. We have a lot to get to, like I said, preseason nonsense, including some stuff overseas. With that, I need to bring in a gentleman that we've had on so many times before. He is the, I guess we can say, the goaltender of the Five Timers Club, if we were an actual beer league team. But let's be honest, kids, if he was playing beer league, apparently he's getting his teeth knocked out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, Cody Janzen. Cody, how are we doing today?
I don't want to talk about teeth. That's the last thing we need to talk about. Oh, my goodness. But I'm doing good.
Can we just say the fact that you got your teeth knocked out, apparently, and you are still working today, because Cody, like me, has a job where he talks to get, he talks for a living. How does it feel talking today, Cody?
Oh, it's weird. So, like, last night, got my two front teeth caved into the boards playing beer league. This morning, woke up at 7, walked to the dentist, said, I need to get in. Like, what is it going to take for me to get in? Worked out a nice little deal there. They were good. They're very helpful. And so got a couple of new teeth put in this morning. The freezing seems to be numbing off. Still in pain, but we're grinding through. And yeah, I mean, here we are. We're talking hockey.
That is probably for the best. And I tell you, the reason why I haven't probably played beer league in a long time, one, because of COVID, two, because the month before my wedding, Cody, similar to you, I guess, I don't know if you just weren't wearing a cage. I don't wear a cage when I skate out. Went hard to the net. Guy tried to lift my stick, missed the stick, got my giblets. Thankfully, I didn't have any teeth get knocked out, but I had a nice big cut right beneath my nose. And the wife wasn't too pleased with that.
Oh, no. I mean, yeah, it's engaged a week and a half ago. I mean, luckily my fiance is not mad about it, but it was not pretty. And again, it's one of those weird ones. Like, yeah, I wear a visor, but like, who expects to be hit in beer league, right? Like, I float around all game, couple of points, no big deal. How are you? Second period, buddy just decides to be a hero and run me from behind, like 2 feet away from the boards. I'm just poking it up. And all of a sudden I got a stick in my back, just face right into the boards, right into the stanchion. Oh, it was brutal, but whatever. That's not really grand.
Should have told the guy that junior C tryouts were last month, eh?
It's just pathetic. I mean, you get it. You're playing a decent level of beer league, whatever. But still, I mean, we're playing an 8:00 game. It's no one. I don't know. I got nothing. I can't say anything too bad about beer league guys, because I do know so many guys who play it and they're awesome. They're like great guys. They're out there for the right reasons. And then you get these idiots who are just buzzing around like it's a tryout camp.
Oh man, that's why I played goal for like half a season. I ended up signing on with the team late, and I remember and I knew the guys, and okay, I thought this would be all right. Just play a little bit, have some fun. And next thing you know, it's like these guys the guys on my team are like, it's game 7, we got to play hard, and like lose their minds. I'm like, holy cripes! And there's a reason why I haven't done it since. Speaking of stupid craziness, Cody, I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if a lot of you at home saw this. Last night in the Ukrainian Hockey League, I don't know how to describe it, Janner. Andrei Deniskin, anyone who hasn't seen it yet, go find it online. It's everywhere. An awful racial gesture last night. What?
We broke that one on World Hockey Report.
Yeah, you guys, it's crazy. Yeah, I forgot to say that. World Hockey Report broke it. That's how we found that out. And, oh gosh, I forgot to write the kid's name down. He was an Arizona prospect. Cody, help me out here.
Sorry, what was that?
Who was the prospect that was towards our Arizona prospect? Who was the kid? He played in the O for Oshawa.
Smerrick.
Yeah, Smerrick. Yeah, and an awful racial gesture towards him. I can't even describe it. I know what it is, but I don't have the words for it, Cody. I listen. I get it. there is the connotation of, oh, it's just, oh, we grew up and whatnot. But how many years is it going to take before we get over that excuse of the fact that that happens in a hockey game to a good player? And like, it's not just, you can't just say now it happens in this country, that country. It happens everywhere. It's worldwide, unfortunately.
And here's my issue with it, and I won't go on too big of a tangent. Obviously, it's a disgusting act, and it's the biggest issue is this is on TV. This isn't a beer league. Like Donbass plays Champions Hockey League. They're playing against the best European teams. There's a lot of former KHL. Like it's good hockey. And now for the Ukrainian league, the UHL, IIHF, to not take a hard stance against this, that's my issue. You can't just go out there and say, yes, we acknowledge it was bad. That's what they did. That's pathetic. That's embarrassing. That's a bad look for the game. Well, someone needs to step up. It's not even, I don't know a proper term for it, but, get some guts and do something about it. Say, hey, you know what? Sure, we're going to do an investigation. Go for it. But place the guy on suspension. Say, hey, he's never going to touch the ice again in another IIHF sanctioned league or event until we figure out what happened here or get to the bottom of it. And then I'm not, you can say ban him for life. You can say whatever. I know yesterday when I put it in the tweet and I commented on it that, hey, you know what I think is fair, maybe if it's not a life suspension, either maybe give him a 5-year ban and say, hey, you have to do 500 hours of community service, working for the league for free. Plus you got to take courses, prove you've actually changed, you've actually acknowledged your wrongdoings and that you're going to be a better human being. I'm not saying we got to throw this guy in jail for the rest of his life, because I do agree that second chances are needed in some circumstances. But if the IIHF isn't going to put down their foot on this, then it's just embarrassing. It's a joke, and you can tell how, crooked hockey is. And that's why hockey isn't for everyone, is because stuff like this doesn't get dealt with. If it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for World Hockey Report and, a lot of ex-NHLers blowing this up, making this the story that needs to get out there, they would have swept it under the rug. That's the sickening part, Tyler, to me. That's my thoughts.
It's a tough call here. Luke Tardif, who just elected the new IIHF president, kind of has his hands full right away after Renee Fassel did not run for re-election, more or less stepping down. But no,
this hard decision though. That's my thing. They
gave it the "we're looking into it" shtick, which I'm pretty sure all those folks that have been following the Chicago Blackhawks scandal know all too well about that saying.
Yeah, this is, I get it. The whole Chicago Blackhawks, that is another bundle of tinder for sure that could light on fire here anytime soon. But this is as blatant as it comes, and for them to beat around the bush, it's pathetic, it's embarrassing, and not to say it's not surprising, but I hope IIHF would do better. I really do. I'm harsh on them to begin with, but this it justifies my point. They don't do enough good for the game.
Right. I'll give my take a little bit later here, folks, but we only got Janner for a little bit of time. So we're going to quickly move things along here. Like I said, if you want to hear me yell and scream, give me about 10 minutes. Janner, the two of the big stories coming into training camp here, one is Jackson Eichel. The saga continues, and for some reason, despite everyone's speculations, all of the banter, whatnot, there seems no end in sight. He fails his physical. What a shocker. Gets his captaincy stripped by the Buffalo Sabres. That's not much of a surprise either. The thing is that, and apparently according to Elliot Friedman, these are still ongoing conversations with Kevin Adams and other general managers in the league. This is not a thing of, there's no phone calls going into Buffalo right now. This is a constant conversation between Adams and other GMs in this league. The big question, I think, is, what do you think? How long do you think this takes? How long until Jack Eichel is either on the ice with the Sabres or with a different team in the NHL?
In my opinion, this could be Jack Eichel sitting out for a full year. This could get ugly where Adams, he set his price and he doesn't want to move on it, because once you start moving on that, all of a sudden your reputation as a GM becomes flexible. You can be a pushover. And for Jack Eichel's case, I don't think him or his agents are really doing him any favors by waiting this long. They're pushing for their surgery that they want. That's fine. That's their right. But again, maybe Buffalo just says, hey, if we can't get them to a team on the West Coast where we're not going to have to play them, and if a team's not going to pay what we want, maybe we do just let them sit around and say, you know what, it sucks, but we're going to make a statement here. We're going to stick to our guns. And it sucks for hockey. It's bad for the NHL. The NHL is a better place when Jack Eichel's in. He's a phenomenal talent. But I don't see this thing moving any way. It doesn't seem like either side wants to budge an inch. And proof in the pudding there was they had a meeting. They had a meeting with the agents, with doctors, with the NHL, all the Buffalo Sabres representation. Eichel was there. They sat in a meeting and they couldn't come to a conclusion. That's an issue. This is a lot bigger than, do they have a suitable trade partner? No, I think this is miles bigger.
Well, the big problem that I have with this, one problem that I have is the fact that if Jack Eichel had this thing done early enough and had time to recover, he could be in Beijing in February. That's obviously not going to be the case anymore. And now you're looking at, I'm not going to give Eichel the generational talent tag because, well, the guy that was drafted in front of him, he's kind of got that one in the back pocket. But he is a very talented hockey player and could do some good for the team. And at what point does the league step in and say, all right, guys, you need to figure this out, or someone on this side is going to get actual scrutiny here, or someone's going to get penalties towards them based on the fact that you guys aren't trying to help this player get back on the ice?
They've tried, though. We talked with Elliott, and he said the exact same thing about the meeting, too, was that they tried. The NHL tried to step in. The NHL can't legally impose anything on them. They're under contract. It's, private business. They both signed off on it. Jack signed off on it. The Pagulas did. They have them under contract. The NHL can't force them to be traded. Could they bribe them? Could they try persuade them? I'm sure they could. Are they going to? I don't think so. I think that, and it sucks for Jack, but I just don't see it happening. I don't know who is going to go under their way to trade for a guy who's going to need surgery. He's going to miss the season, likely. It's sad right now. It's sad. You feel bad for Jack. You feel bad for the team. But end of the day, they're shooting themselves in the foot, and it's the Buffalo Sabres 101.
It's so hard to look at this, especially for Eichel's side of things, because right now the conversation is polar opposites. It's either, help Eichel get him back on the ice, or some people, not as many obviously, are on the Buffalo Sabres are right. They should be entitled to what they want to do. Unfortunately, there's really no middleman here, Janet. If you were Kevin Adams, if you were the Pagulas, what do you do to try to remedy this? Do you give Eichel the surgery while he's on your team, or do you just bring down the value of your trade because teams realize that if this surgery doesn't go exactly to plan, Eichel's not worth $10 million?
Exactly. That's the big issue. And I know you kind of said he wasn't a generational talent, but if you do think about it, he's a top-line player on any team in the league.
Oh, yeah.
And when on his game, I say he can be a top 10 forward in the league. He's that good. He's that important. So I don't know. I want to see him in the game. That's the bottom line here. I think it's kind of scummy what Buffalo's doing at this point. Because, he's not going to be the first person ever to have that surgery. It's not like he is changing the medical field here. No, his doctors think that this is what's best for him, and he's going to listen to the people he trusts, not the doctors in Buffalo. That's fine. I've got no issue with that. And if Buffalo isn't comfortable with the surgery, I'd prefer they come out and have some actual reasoning, not just, that's what our doctors say. Come out with some actual reasoning. That's the issue.
That would, I think, a little more transparency would be nice. But transparency in the National Hockey League, in this economy, Cody, come on now. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Last one here, Jan, before we let you get back to work over there. Preseason hockey started this past weekend. Obviously, a big win for the Seattle Kraken last night. Didn't play in their actual home barn. They're just playing over there, and I believe they played where the Thunderbirds play. Pick up a win over Vancouver last night. Toronto and Montreal play again for the second time. How much stock do you take in preseason hockey? I don't mind watching it because you get to see the American leaguers or some of the prospects play with the older guys and whatnot, but I don't know. I don't get the same kind of amped up. I know obviously it doesn't mean for standings or anything like that, but how much do you look at preseason hockey and say this matters and this will translate to the regular season?
0%. And here's why. Because you look at the lineups between, say, the Oilers and Flames, the Kraken and the Canucks. those guys, I mean, you can probably put 70 to 80% of them, they're not going to be on the team. And if we're talking about even actual NHL rosters, top to bottom, 1 through 20 on the ice in preseason, it's still not going to be the same as regular season hockey. So you can't put that much stock into it. What you can put stock into is game one of the NHL season. And so you can't exactly earn your full-time spot in the NHL in preseason. You can certainly lose it. That goes without saying. But again, get the guys into regular season, earn your spot, get yourself on opening night in the lineup. And when you think about a guy like Josh was saying, that's what he's got to do these preseason games, because if he can get himself into a regular season game, that's what you're going to value. That's where you're going to take your good hard look at him and say, is he an NHLer? Is he a guy you want on your team? It's the same thing in Edmonton. If you look at Tyler Benson,
Oh yeah,
is he an NHLer because he had a good preseason game against the Flames rookies? Or is he a good NHLer because he earned his way into that fourth line and on opening night he's there and he's effective? I don't know. I don't think you put too much stock into, the 82-game season from a 7-game preseason. That's just me, because we're not looking at the same rosters. We're not looking at the same intensity. And frankly, the environments are totally different.
See, that's why I don't mind watching the Kraft Hockeyville games, but the one between Toronto and Ottawa and was it Lupin, Ontario, I think it was. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, look how good the Leafs are. I'm like, yeah, because they're playing Belleville. If the Leafs playing Belleville, of course they're going to win 4 or 5-0. But I mean, that's just how it is. Like you mentioned, it's more or less to see who can get their way into the lineup, more or less for, oh, look, Matthews is going to be on a 75-goal pace this year because he scored 3 times in the preseason. No one's really care about that. Oh, man. But that's just how it is, right, Janner?
I put a lot of stock, and I guess not a lot. I put the most stock into goaltending. If a goalie has a great preseason, now I'm going, okay, maybe he's going to contend for a backup role, especially if it's a younger guy.
Yeah.
And also, if they've done a bad preseason, you can go, hey, they are a far ways away from the NHL. That's, I guess, maybe 1% was a little lower, 0%, whatever I did say. I think goaltending is probably something you can assess quite fairly. But again, they're facing AHL/depth NHL shots. Once it comes to the regular season, that just gets ramped up. The shots come in harder, faster. The passes are better. It's still a different game. But yeah, sure, for some of those young goaltenders, I do put some stock into how I think about them.
Yeah, it gives them an opportunity to wear their team's colors. That's why you watch the prospects tournament. I watched it in Traverse City, listen to Ken Cal and Todd Crocker. It's like, oh yeah, these are cool. But it's like, okay, we may see these kids. Who knows? But we have been chatting up here with Cody Janzen of World Hockey Report. Breaking news on World Hockey Report. It happens, guys. You have to follow them to figure it out, though, at World Hockey RPT. Don't let someone else retweet them. You retweet them yourself. Go on there, at Janner31_ on Twitter as well if you want to follow Cody himself. Janner, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I know we don't get you for long, but hey, something's better than nothing, right?
Hey, I try to do my best here. No, I appreciate you, man. Always enjoy listening to the show, too.
Thanks, Janner. You get back to work, man. Have a good one. That was Cody Janzen from World Hockey Report. It's funny when Cody's talked about the young goaltenders getting shots and whatnot. One story that I always find hilarious when I remember goaltenders that get their first NHL action, because now most of the time, 9 times out of 10, the first NHL game for a goaltender is a regular season game, yes, but typically he does play in the preseason. I remember seeing Jimmy Howard in the fall of 2005 in September. He was wearing his main Black Bear goalie pad still. He just came up out of college hockey for Maine. He was ended up going to Grand Rapids, obviously, but I remember seeing him. So that was his first experience. His first actual NHL game was during the 07-08 season, but you get your experience there. But to Cody's point, typically you don't see all the NHL shots. However, there is one story. Corey Schneider, after graduating from Boston College, his first NHL camp coming out of college was with the Vancouver Canucks, team he drafted by. Ended up going to Manitoba, was an all-star there, great goaltender. As we've learned, I mean, obviously, his career didn't quite come to fruition like many thought, but he was still a pretty capable backup there for Luongo, ended up getting the starting job thereafter. However, he talks about one of his first shots that he faced in a preseason game. It was against Edmonton. This would have been 08 or 09, I think it was. Yeah, 08 or 09. He was going up against him. That's when they had Sheldon Surrey. Sheldon Surrey, who could shoot who was clocked at one point, I think during one of those Oilers skills competitions, at 106. His first shot that he sees from Sheldon Surrey at the point, from the left point, just an absolute nuclear missile, blows it over his shoulder, top corner. Welcome to the NHL, kid. So that's why whenever you say someone says, oh man, there's not much going, that's why goaltenders are really the only thing you can watch out for, young goaltenders, because for a lot of them, getting their first pro experience is one thing. That's why I see Spencer Knight and I say to myself, wow, that actually worked out, because typically that doesn't happen for goaltenders just coming out of college to all of a sudden be National Hockey League ready. I have a potential spam call coming in here. We'll keep the mute on that for that one. In just a few minutes here, folks, we got a lot to get to today. We got news and notes and whatnot. And also here in a couple minutes, after we get back from a break, we are going to have Chris King on. The interview I did last Tuesday on the Kuhl Show channels, that'll be replayed here for you guys to watch back in full. Don't worry, checked it back. Not totally outdated. We did not get to the news from the Lou Lamoriello press conference that happened after the interview, but we got to hear his take on the Islanders' upcoming season and how things went last year as well, including that new building, the UBS Arena over there near Belmont Park. That'll be here in just a few minutes. I'm going to give my take here on this whole kit and caboodle with Andrei Deniskin. So, like I said, I'm not going to tell you what he did. You can look that up for yourselves. You all have social media. That's why you're here on 12 Ounce Sports. You have it on your phone. You have laptops. You have something to figure this out, what it was. My thing is the fact that I don't understand why for everything that has happened over the past year and a half, how is not everyone in the world seen that racism is not appreciated anymore? It's not cool anymore. It never should have been cool. It never was cool. Here we are, though, talking about a player who got into it with another player. Yes, was he of color? Okay, whatever. He's a hockey player. You get into it, what do? Make a stupid racial gesture towards him. And I agree with Janner on this one, guys. He should be banned for the rest of the season. No, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for, it was instinctive emotion. The stupidest part was he went on Instagram. That's the best thing you can do, kids. Try to back yourself up. Try to get yourself out of Dodge. What do? Take it to social media. That's always a good plan. What does he do? He says something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here. Obviously it's very important to make sure we keep it cool, and obviously, but emotions in hockey are different. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, am I supposed to? Oh, my goodness. If I get hit by a player and whatnot, I'm going to yell an LGBTQ slur at him. Hell no. Guys, you remember how big of a deal it was a couple years ago when Morgan Riley he thought he had drew a penalty, and he turned back in the ref and he said, bleeping raggot, like to call the penalty, and how crazy it was when people thought he said a different word that rhymed with raggot. Guys, and trust me, had that been true, that Morgan Riley said that to an official, holy moly, would the Morgan Riley sweaters been burned in Toronto? Granted, there have been some people that have been like, what's the big deal? Because they're stupid and old. But that's the thing. Actually, no, there's still young people that are that stupid as well. Trust me, I encounter them all the time. It's great. But that's the thing. It does not make it allowable. It shouldn't make it acceptable. Punish this guy to the fullest extent that you can. Kick him out for the rest of the year. Make him do community service. I agree with Cody. This guy should not be playing the rest of this season in that Ukrainian hockey league. If you are willing to make stupid gestures, stupid motions, and just try to say something along the lines of, well, emotions in hockey get high. No, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for time for stupidity. For saying something that's completely asinine. It makes your club look bad, makes your teammates look bad because they have to be in the same locker room with you. And yes, if I was on the ice and I saw that, I would have stepped up and done something. I would have gone after him. However, trust me when I say, not everyone's staring at the guy when he's doing this. Not everyone's looking at Deniskin when he did this gesture, okay? Not everyone was going at him because trust me, I think that a few more people would have taken exception if they'd seen it. I myself as a goaltender, I forgot to ask Cody about this. We wanted to keep that rather short though. when I'm a goaltender and there's a penalty, I just kind of skate around, stare at myself in the glass because I'm very egotistical that way, and I kind of just forget what's going on unless something else arises. So I can see why players may not have noticed that in the moment. That's the power of social media, of course, because we see this and we get to watch people be jackasses on, well, maybe not national television, but on the interwebs. We got to see a guy that should no longer be allowed to play the game of hockey. Hockey is for everyone. However, those people that don't want it to be for everyone should not be the ones to be allowed to play this beautiful game. With that, we're going to hit a break. When we come back, we will be showing you the replay, the fallback, the callback, the whatever you want to call it, the interview with Chris King when I chat with him about the New York Islanders, the upcoming season, how things could go, how things ended last year, how the new arena looks, and what it was like broadcasting during the pandemic. We'll be talking about all that and more when we come back here on The Keel Show on 12 Ounce Sports. New York Islanders, ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris King. Chris, how are we doing today, sir?
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Is it on, Tyler? Is it on?
You are on and clear, Chris. I remember as soon as I started, I'm like, I can't hear myself think right now. What is going on here? I got to ask you, Chris, from broadcaster to broadcaster, how many times has that happened to you when you've gone on the air, you come back from a break, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, nobody can hear me?
Oh, yeah, it happens to us all. So, you don't feel bad about it. You just realize, it happens actually more for me. I do minor league baseball in the summer. So in the summer, I'm engineering my own broadcast as well. And, of course, I'm the one who's not pushing the button that turns my mic on. But during hockey season, we have a dedicated engineer, and our engineers are so good that never happens. So during baseball, quite a bit. During hockey, it's someone else's job, and they make sure that button goes on when it's time to talk.
I was about to say, you guys have a good crew there over that Hofstra radio station. I actually, it's funny, I was telling my wife that I was doing the interview with you today. She said, I'm like, hey, isn't that the guy that sounds like he's an Islanders fan calling Islanders games? And I'm like, yeah, because we listened to a lot of you during the playoffs this past year, Chris, because there was for some reason, the Islanders always seem to play in the afternoon. And that's when I do a lot of my driving around. So I turn on the NHL app and I listen to the games. So we heard a lot of you guys. What was it like for you broadcasting during at least the playoffs when NASA was starting to fill back up, but just so many afternoon games, it seemed like?
Yeah, but you know what, Tyler, most of those games mean you're on national television, right? So that's a real, chance to showcase, maybe folks who don't follow the Islanders on a regular basis and don't really understand the incredible story that they had, this year, and closing out the Coliseum, as you were saying, which they did in remarkable fashion, and then coming within one win of the Stanley Cup Finals. So it was an amazing ride, and I think the biggest thing for me, Tyler, was we went from the playoffs 2 years ago, where the Islanders had a very similar run, but all of that was done virtually. I was sitting at, as you mentioned, Hofstra University's radio station studios, calling those games off a monitor. But here, by the time the playoffs rolled around and by the time we got to the semifinal round, the Coliseum was packed. Pittsburgh was packed. Boston was packed. Tampa was packed. We got to go back on the road. So it just really gave everyone, all broadcasters, an energy jolt to be back in those buildings instead of sitting in a studio that was, hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles away from where the actual game was being played.
How was it at first broadcasting this season? Because obviously, at least in Nassau and a lot of barns in the United States, the capacity started to grow little by little, but everyone pretty much started about the same, very little, if any, capacity. How was it going from almost an empty barn there at the Coliseum to literally that last game, that last home game at the Coliseum where they closed it down, where it was just madhouse, just like it was back in the 80s and early 90s?
Yeah, it's a great point, Tyler, and it's pretty much, exactly what you said. When we first came back, there were no fans at all. So that was, you were happy to be back in the arena, but especially during intermissions is when I really noticed it, because during the games, they pumped in the PA sound, they pumped in the music, they pumped in the fake crowd, and it sounded like a hockey game. But during those intermissions, when I have a chance usually to walk around a little bit, I mean, you could hear a pin drop. It was so quiet. So it was just eerie to walk around a completely empty building. And then little by little, I remember the first night so well because the Islanders did a great job. The first night they were allowed to have fans back in. They did 1,000 first responders. So those were the perfect people to welcome back in. And then it went to 1,600, and then it went to 2,400, and then it went to 3,000 and 6,000 and 9,000. And before you knew it, it was nearly the full capacity, of the Coliseum, which is still shortened these days compared to most buildings. But you would have known there was only maybe a couple of hundred empty seats by the time it was over for COVID reasons. And it did sound just like, the Coliseum of the old days and even the Dynasty days, as you mentioned. So to go from absolutely nothing, I think our first 12 games were completely without fans, to go to a jam-packed building for those final, 2 playoff games against Tampa, which both had incredible endings. Game 4, Ryan Pulock makes what's going to be known as the save in Islander history now in the crease to win the game. And then Anthony Beauvillier wins Game 6 in overtime to send it to Game 7. And we didn't know it then, but that, turned out to be the final game ever at the Coliseum. But anybody that was there, either one of those 2 games will never forget just how loud that building was and how amazing those endings were.
It's funny because I have a lot of guys that I talk to during the playoffs, like, see, Tampa's going to get it done tonight. And they were referring to Game 6. And I'm like, those fans will not allow the Islanders to lose that last game at the Coliseum. No way, Chris, was Tampa going to walk out of there with the Wales trophy. I knew the Islanders were at least forced it to 7. It was going to be tough going down there to Tampa, but not a chance, Chris. And you've been there since that building was erected in 1972 when that first team first stepped on the ice, that the Islanders fans, whether they had to protest the game or not, the Tampa Bay Lightning were not walking out of Game 6 as winners, right?
And that's the feeling going in, absolutely, because you know what, they had been unbeaten and they remained unbeaten in Game 6s in the entire playoffs. The problem for the Islanders was in the Tampa series, in the first 2 series, the Pittsburgh series and the Boston series, those series were knotted up at 2 apiece, and the Islanders went on the road and won Game 5. Came home and closed it out in some of their, most emphatic victories. I mean, a convincing win over the Penguins in Game 6, a convincing win over the Bruins in Game 6. The difference in the Tampa series was they go down to Tampa even at 2 games apiece in Game 5, and they get shut out 8-0. So, they're coming back home off an 8-0 loss. Here's this team that just absolutely steamrolled them 2 nights earlier. And, we all hoped it was going to have that ending, Tyler, and we all felt confident because of the Islanders' success in the previous Game 6s. But, if you're coming in off an 8-0 loss, it's hard to have the confidence as high as it would have been as they, came home off incredible wins in Game 5s in Pittsburgh in overtime and in Boston, which they had a big 3-goal lead in, and then the Bruins got within 1 late. But, you had the gut feeling they would pull it out. But let me tell you, the confidence was shook a little bit when the previous game was an 8-0 loss to the same team you're about to play again.
That is true. I do get that. And I tell you right now, by the power of Ralph Macchio, you guys were going to win that game, Game 6. But you go into the offseason now. We'll wait to get to the actual team first. Let's talk about this new little building you guys got going over there by Belmont Park, UBS Arena. I've seen the pictures. Obviously, a lot of us have seen the graphic art that's been the portrayal of what it's going to be. But have you been on the site yet? I know I've seen Stan Fischler doing some stuff over there. Have you been able to stop by the rink yet?
Yep, I've had 3 tours, Tyler. Pretty much, right at the groundbreaking, somewhere in the middle, and then my last tour, I think, about 3 weeks ago. So, I've been there just to see the progress each and every time, and I'm just amazed at how much has changed each time I go back. And I'm sure I'll go back, once or twice more before opening night, which is November 20th. But it's just a jewel, an absolute jewel of a building, and credit to the Islander ownership and management. that, took the best they could find in every other, not only NHL building, but they went to most NBA buildings, most football stadiums, most baseball stadiums. And they listened to the fans. The fans told them the things they loved about the Coliseum, so they made sure to bring some of that in, but got rid of the things they didn't like, and then kind of took the best of everybody else's building. So everybody copies from everybody else. But from what I've seen, being in there and just knowing all the thought that went into the architecture, it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be absolutely spectacular. Again, it opens November 20th. That's the good news. The bad news, the Islanders have to play 13 road games to begin the season, which is an NHL record. No team has ever played more than 9 straight on the road to open up a year. So they're going to be on the road for 13 straight games. Now, again, they do get a lot of breaks in there. There's a 5-day break, a 4-day break, a couple 3-day breaks. So it's not like they're going to spend 5 weeks away from home. They'll get to come home, have some time with their family, cut it up into small chunks. But that's going to be the big challenge. What will that record be after those first 13 games when they step on the ice at UBS Arena to face the Calgary Flames on November 20th?
It's so funny to look at that because you talk about the breaks, and we had Ken Cal on last week, and I remember I thought to myself, we were talking about how with the All-Star game and the Olympic break being jammed in there, now granted the Olympics, things could change, but at least that's the NHL's plan. If there's any silver lining for the Islanders probably having a jam-packed schedule later on down the line, at least they're going to be home for most of those games, right?
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing. Then you take the 13 out, right? If you realize everybody plays 41 home and 41 road, if you take those 13 out, let me do my math here quickly. That tells me you got 28. At that point, only 28 road games left and 41 home games after that. So, you got to take advantage of the fact that after you get through those 13, there are a lot of extensive homestands, and you talked about it. That built-in break for the Islanders. It's exactly 3 weeks between All-Star Weekend rolling into the Olympics. So they'll have 3 entire weeks off, so certainly time to rest, and that'll come in February, generally right when teams, start to make the big push in March and April for the postseason. So they've just got to get through, that 13-gamer, which, again, on paper looks daunting, but when you see all the breaks that are built into it, it's not like, they're packing a suitcase and not coming back for 5 weeks. It's nothing like that. They'll get home for plenty of time in between. One of those games is in New Jersey, which is barely a road trip. They just bus on over and come back. So, again, even though it is, 13 games, the way it's broken up, it won't be nearly as bad as it sounds, to be honest.
Yeah, and that is the good thing. And obviously, going back to the Metropolitan Division, you play a lot of the teams that are within driving distance. Obviously, some teams like to fly, even though it's only a couple-hour drive. You mentioned the Devils there, Chris. We'll probably be the last one here before we jump on to this year's Islanders team. But Travis Zajac retiring after 15 seasons, signs a one-day contract. We talked a little bit about on last night's show. But, he was only there for a little bit for the Islanders. I believe it was 27 games off the top of my head, including the playoffs. But you got to see him just at least, what was it, at least 4 times a year into the current schedule, but more before that because he'd been with the team now, with the Devils, 15 seasons. Obviously, just finished with the Islanders here. What made Zajac such a special player and why he could play so long? Just from your experience as mostly for the majority of his career being on the other side of the booth.
Yeah, I think just, everything that they got him for. The fact that, as a center, he could do that. He could play wing. He could play the left side. He could play the right side. He did a little bit of everything for the Islanders. Obviously, he can kill penalties. Terrific face-off guy, great character guy. And, when Oliver Wahlstrom went down early in the playoffs, he was the guy who really came in and jumped on that third line with J.G. Pajot, and he played some terrific hockey. So, they loved his leadership. They loved everything he brought. Lou likes the ex-Devils, too. Lou Lamoriello, the Islander general manager, is obviously Kyle Palmieri has come back. They've gotten in, Zach Parise, who they've added to the lineup as well. They have Corey Schneider as, technically their third goaltender. Obviously, Andy Green has been a terrific pickup on the blue line. So there are a lot of ex-Devils sprinkled over this Islander roster. And again, a big, part of that is Lou Lamoriello's connection to these players and knowing exactly what they bring and what they're going to add to the room. And certainly, when the Islanders needed a veteran presence, when the youngster went down in the playoffs, there was Travis Zajac to step right in, and the club never missed a beat.
It's so funny how, because I remember I said to a lot of people look at me and say, the Islanders, they can't be good for that long. They have so many guys that are over 30. They have, the Komarovs, the Clutterbucks, Martins, and whatnot. But they have, like you said, that youthfulness kind of sprinkled in there. Of course, we can't mention, we got to talk about Matthew Barzal. And you have younger guys that are coming through, like Oliver Wahlstrom eventually. Casey Zizekas is, I say he's one of the younger guys, but he's 30. But then you mentioned Anthony Beauvillier with that big goal in Game 6. That's just up front. I mean, Ryan Pulock's going to probably be the future of this team on the back end. But I like the fact that that Lou is bringing in older, veteran guys to the deadline that he knows that are going to help in this playoff push. But at the same token, he realizes he can't give up the younger guys that are going to carry this team moving forward once those guys hang up their skates.
Absolutely. And, you talked about it. Matt Barzell's 24. Anthony Beauvillier's 24. Noah Dobson's 21. Oliver Wallstrom's 21. These are the guys, that are the youth movement of the club. But then you sprinkle in all those veterans. Obviously, bringing in Zdeno Chara is going to push the average age up quite a bit at 44, the oldest player in the league. And Zach Parise, who comes over at 37. But you know what? You have a lot of guys, as you mentioned, who are right in the middle, like Casey Cizikas and Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey and those guys. So it is a good mix of extremely older players, extremely younger players, and in the middle as well. And, right now I just really like the balance that they're showing across the four lines, across the 6D, and obviously Sorokin. We didn't mention him, a extremely young goaltender who is going to have a great fight on his hands this year if he wants to try to unseat Semyon Varlamov as the number one goaltender for this club.
That is very true because I think Sorokin. I mean, whenever Varlamov seemed to slip up at all, and Sorokin could step in, and vice versa, and that's where you have a really good tandem. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Barry Trotz's system, but with the way Robin Leonard came out in 18-19 and the way Varlamov's kind of revitalized his career, apparently that's where goaltenders who need to revitalize their career have to go. At least that's the way things are looking there in Long Island. You mentioned Zdeno Chara there, and of course Zach Parise are two guys that of course, Parise coming over from Minnesota after that buyout, someone that Lou knows well. Lou drafted him when he was in New Jersey. I got to ask you the big question here, and maybe we have to ask this when you jump on the press conference call with Lou here in about 10 or so minutes. What are these AAV values for these one-year contracts? I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now. Chara's been signed for a few days. Parise has been signed for felt like 2 weeks now, and there's still no contract value. What's the deal there, Chris?
Yeah, that's a strange one, Tyler. I don't have an answer for you. And again, remember, for a long time, all the UFAs and RFAs that had been signed, weren't out there at all. Nobody knew what they were making until those numbers finally came through. And I couldn't tell you, what Parise and Chara are going to be certainly on one-year deals. But as far as all the other guys are concerned, it's amazing that, Lou gets flack for doing it the way he does it. If you think about it, why would you want anyone who you're potentially going to deal with to know exactly how much room you have left against the cap? The analogy I give it, Tyler, is when you play poker, what do? You keep your cards facing you. You don't show everybody else. By basically letting out, who you've signed and at what price, every other general manager would know exactly how much room you have left under the cap. And if you're trying to make a deal with him, that's information you don't want them to have. So I think, as we go forward here, more and more GMs are going to do it the Lou way, where you're going to try to keep this information off Cap Friendly for as long as you possibly can until you make all your deals, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. But to me, as a poker player, you don't show everybody your cards. You keep them facing yourself, and you make everybody else wonder what you've got exactly, right? To me, that's the perfect analogy, and I don't understand why other teams feel they're compelled to let the whole world know what their situation is, because it only hurts your bargaining power.
Well, clearly, you never played poker with my wife. No, I tell you, I agree with you there, because that does make a lot of sense. Because, of course, when, coming from, if anyone ever watches Toronto, when JT was signed, everyone needed to know that he was getting a pay cut coming to Toronto. Same thing when Connor McDavid. I mean, could you imagine if Jonathan Tavares, and I know I mentioned this, and it's not just because we're talking to the New York Islanders play-by-play guy here, but could you imagine if Lou was one of the guys that partially signed him there. Or no, it was Kyle Dubas that signed him right after Lou left and went to the Islanders. Could you imagine if Kyle Dubas waited 2 months with that contract value and didn't give it up until the day before the season? How much social media would have just exploded with speculation? That would have been crazy.
It's true, but again, as I explained, it doesn't make sense to me. Just because Lou's the only one that does it doesn't mean it's wrong. I think it's right. I think you're going to see more and more people copy his model when they really sit down and think about it. What advantage is there to telling the whole world exactly where you are as far as cap space remaining? There's none. It only hinders you. So Lou's, look, he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. He's the winner of the GM of the Year in back-to-back years for a reason, and he does things his way. He has his entire life. But to me, this is one that's a no-brainer, that if you're not doing it his way, I can't find the logic why you'd want everyone else out there that you're potentially trying to make a trade with to know exactly how much room you have left under the cap.
That's a real good point. They're technically over the cap right now on Cap Friendly. However, they're a little over almost $4.5 million, but they still have to take off the $6 million with the LTIR for Johnny Boychuk, which would give them a couple $1 million. So that's where they have right now. I remember when I heard about the Chara signing, the first thing I thought was, all right, Lou, what you got here? And that's because I just try to figure out, because obviously Chara is on the back nine, if not playing on 17 right now, Chris. what do you think? And I mean, shoot, you were there when big old Chara stepped down the ice, when everyone else was around, maybe 6'1", 6 foot, and all of a sudden here comes this behemoth stepping on the ice there at the Coliseum back in the 90s. What do you think that Chara can bring now to this hockey club? And from what you knew about him when you kind of saw him back in his early days in Long Island?
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, what I think he can bring now is a veteran presence on that blue line. And again, I know he's 44, but I know him extremely well. As you said, I was with the team when they drafted him back in 1996. He played his first 4 years in the league as an Islander, and I got very close to him, and I kind of stayed in touch with him over the years. So here's this guy who's 44, but he's in shape like he's 24. 6'9", over 250 pounds. He's got that incredible reach. He doesn't have the 108.8 mile an hour slap shot that he used to have, the all-time record, but he still can bring it. He's going to do a terrific job on the penalty kill. And you know what? The Islanders' biggest need was a left shot defenseman. They had to send Nick Leddy to Detroit for cap reasons, the same way they lost Devon Taves, 2 years ago to Colorado just because of cap reasons. But going into this week's camp, their glaring need was a left shot defenseman. And suddenly here's this guy in Zdeno Chara who's won a Stanley Cup, who's won a Norris Trophy, who's won a Mark Messier Award. 14 years he was the captain of the Boston Bruins. This is the guy, if he's out there, you got to bring him in. So, kudos to Lou for getting it done and really, settling him into a perfect role. They're not bringing him in here, Tyler, to be a 1, 2, or 3. They're bringing him in to be a 4, 5, or 6, and he's perfectly suited for that role. So, as you mentioned, I go way, way back with him to the early days, and when he arrived on Long Island, he was so raw, he was so big. He was just like, there was so much attention drawn to him immediately as the tallest player in the NHL coming to the Islanders in that 96 draft, and he handled it so well. And I was just so proud to follow his whole career. And you could just see the look on his face when he held his press conference, just saying, hey, I've come full circle now. I've come all the way back to the place where it began. And like you said, it's hole 17 or 18, but Z, he might just say, hey, let's go to the 19th hole and keep it going, right?
Go all Caddyshack on him there. Yeah, I like this Islanders team. I'm getting ready to do my locked on predictions here for the season, and it's hard for me not to say that this team has a shot to take the Metro. What is the ceiling for this hockey club, Chris? What are the expectations heading into the 21-22 season?
It's take the next step. It has to be, Tyler. That's the thing. I think that's the biggest difference for the Islanders going in this year is in the past, they certainly surprised some people. Maybe, 2 years ago, that run to the conference finals, whoa, hey, here's a team that, nobody expected to be there, and there they are again. And then last year, even going into the season, a lot of people had them missing the playoffs, and yet they go back and they go to the same exact spot and take it a game further. So, look, back-to-back seasons, they've been down to the Final Four. Back-to-back seasons, they've lost to the eventual champion, Stanley Cup Lightning. Tampa Bay Lightning lost the Stanley Cup winner, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And this year, they lost Game 7, 1-0 in Tampa on a shorthanded goal. So they're one goal away from the Stanley Cup final and a team that really didn't scare anybody in the Montreal Canadiens on the other side. So it certainly was, disappointing. But I think the fact that, you add the Parisi element, you add the Chara element, and otherwise you're bringing back exactly the same team. Really no other changes besides those two. You're going to get a healthy Anders Lee back. Here's the guy that, was your leading goal scorer for 4 years. He missed the entire playoffs, a 40-goal man in the past. And you're going to get Ilya Sorokin now with that rookie season and learning English and the North American rinks behind him. I just see it, as an upside that they might be the team to beat right now in the Metro. And I can't see anybody that would give you an argument to say why they would take a step back when the roster is improved. And again, the Noah Dobsons and the Ilya Sorokins now have that valuable experience under their belt as Noah goes into his third year and Ilya into his second.
Oh man, the Metro, I always call it the monsters of the Metro because they'll find a way to have 5 teams go to the playoffs, especially with the Eastern Conference back to normal the way it is. The Islanders, they have the tools, and that's like you said, all they have to do is just keep climbing up, and let's see how they go here in the brand new, beautiful looking UBS Arena. Maybe I'll convince the wife to make a New York trip this year. We'll just have to wait and see. We have been chatting it up here with Chris King. Chris has got to duck on over. He's got to go ask Lou Lamoriello how much he's paying Zach Parise this year for us.
I'll do it. I'll do it for you, Tyler, until Tyler wants to know.
Tyler wants to know, and then Lou, and I'm going to have 3 guys with suits knock on my door tomorrow, and I'm going to have to ask you a question, Chris, on how these people got my address. Chris, thanks for stopping in once again, man. It's been a pleasure as always. Best of luck to you this season. We'll catch you on down the road.
Thanks, Tyler. It's always great talking hockey with you.
That was Chris King. Welcome back to the Kuehl Show, everyone. Tyler Kuehl here, the inside of the insiders. Thank you once again to Chris King for taking the time last week to chat with us about the New York Islanders, and of course for Cody Janzen for always being a beauty and jumping on when he can. He's really, when I say get back to work, I mean that in literal sense. He's actually working right now when he comes on our show. He just finds a little bit of time to jump on, which I can't say is a bad thing to do, simply because of the fact that I actually did that a couple times actually with him for World Hockey Report. A couple of his midday shows. You catch World Hockey Report around 10 a.m. Eastern time. So when Janner wakes up in the morning out there in Alberta, I literally will get up and I was doing I was working at the radio station. Next thing you know, he's like, "Hey, you want to come on the show today?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not? Let's have some fun." So I was awkwardly in not this studio. I was in my work radio station studio. What I would love to do is it's funny. I keep telling my boss, I'm like, I really don't have to show up to work here, right? Like, I shouldn't have to. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I have all the equipment here. I have as you can tell, I have a nice microphone. I have a mixer. I have all the equipment to make it work. I can work from home. Why can't I stay home and just work from here? Because then I don't have to deal with angry phone calls. That'd be fun, right? Getting the chance to just kind of sit there and just do nothing all day and sit here and talk to you folks. Oh my gosh, especially since the wife's like sleeping half the time, I could just sit here and talk to you people all day long. Doesn't that sound like fun? We're not going to talk all night tonight. Don't worry, kids. I have some stuff to watch tonight because, for better or worse, I have stuff to do. I'm trying to think what I have a couple articles I got to write. Not hockey articles. I do my stuff for MLive and call it good. But no, I got some other stuff here and whatnot. So don't worry. I'll keep you guys cozy here for the next probably 45 minutes or so. Let's get into some news that we have here today. So I feel weird doing this angle because I looked down at my notes. I'm like, you can see me just like look up and down. People on the podcast are like, we can't see anything, Tyler. I'm like, listen. We do have an announcement here at the end of the show I have to make, for better or worse. Yes, it has to do with the show, obviously. That's why I'm making an announcement here. The Seattle Kraken, like I said last night, hosted their first preseason game in their franchise history. First time you get to see the beautiful Kraken sweaters on the ice. Yeah, words are tough. Riley Sheahan got the first goal of the game. They won 5-3 over the Vancouver Canucks. Tinky Winky making an immediate impact with his new hockey club. I'm interested to see how much time on the ice he gets, because this is a team that has good goaltending. Drieger and Grubauer back there. Good defense. Mark Giordano leading the crew. And up front, boy, you hope Alexander Venberg pulls something out of his keister, because, boy, if the similarity between Vegas and Seattle shows anything, is that this is a hockey team that you're wondering where the goals are going to come from. Because similar to what we saw with Vegas, saw Nate Schmidt go to Vegas. Marc-Andre Fleury go to Vegas. Goaltending and defense was okay. Derek Englund was an experienced defenseman. I know Shea Theodore was not there yet, but they had some good guys in the back end. Not Lucas Spiza. Don't worry, I'm not going that far. But they had the talent. They had the ability. They had the right pieces to keep the puck out of the net. Who was going to score? Well, William Karlsson, of course, who just never seemed to score while he was in Columbus, and obviously goes into a wide-open Gerard Gallant system, and boy, it pays off. 46 goals that first season. So we may see a guy. I'm not saying Riley Sheahan's going to score 50, guys. I am not going to go on a limb that far. However, there's going to be someone that's going to shock people. Could be Venberg, but maybe that we're talking to it in existence, it may not happen. So a couple other things. Montreal having some problems. Mike Hoffman out 4 weeks with a lower body injury undisclosed during training camp. And also to make matters worse, last year's Hobey Baker Award winner and Cole Caulfield, my pick to be the gosh darn Calder Trophy winner, is listed as day-to-day after leaving an inter-squad warm-up game earlier on Saturday, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, it was. So Montreal is already having the injury bug, as if Shea Weber never going to play hockey again, and Carey Price still out for who knows how long. things are not looking good there for Les Habitants in Quebec. I really like to think that Montreal can get back on their feet, though. But the Atlantic Division is going to be a lot tighter. We talked about it with Thomas Biondo a couple weeks back. Montreal, there is a chance that they may miss the playoffs. I don't think that this is a conversation that people should be shocked that we are having here. But we'll just have to keep our eyes and ears peeled on that. Going to St. Louis, they made a little bit of noise this week. So Doug Armstrong gets extended for 5 years as the general manager of the St. Louis Blues. Shortly thereafter, he trades Zach Sanford to Ottawa, gets Logan Brown and a 2022 conditional fourth-round pick from Ottawa. The condition in the pick is the fact that it gets removed from the deal if Brown plays more than 30 games in the NHL this season. So as long as Doug Armstrong doesn't think Logan Brown's an everyday NHLer, they're okay. Which means you could try to bury him in the minors. However, this team's not going to be good, kids. This team may struggle a little bit. Oh boy. We have news coming out of the Washington Capitals camp, simply because of the fact that I follow them now. Hey, it comes with a new gig. Dylan McElrath has been suspended 2 preseason games and 2 regular season games for an illegal check to the head. The Capitals won their game in a shootout last night. However, I love how the fact that they're trying, the NHL Department of Player Safety is trying to show that they're trying to work here. Why isn't my finger scan working? Do I have to do this? Okay, whatever. Trying to figure out who he hit on Boston, Stephen Fogarty. Oh, yeah. Listen. And the first one, why can't you be this consistent during the regular season? Thank you very much, Hockey Twitter, for coming out and saving my butt on that. I don't understand the point of the fact that when a hockey team, I get it. It's the preseason, thinking to ourselves, oh, everything's going to take it easy, whatnot, and guys are going after each other's heads. For those that don't know, on Locked On Network, the Crosscheck podcast, with Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clark. I'm going to be on that coming up tomorrow. We recorded today. I'm going to be on it tomorrow on their show where I talk about the Washington Capitals. And I kind of joke that you'll never see a guy like Dylan McElrath get called up. Well, not now. He's listed down there in Hershey. I talked about how Alexander Alexiev may be the next guy to really get called up from Hershey on the back end because Washington has a little bit of issues this year in terms of defense with depth in the defensive end. John Carlson is coming back from an injury. Michael Kempney is coming back from an injury. Dmitry Orlov is a liability at times. They could be an interesting hockey club, but I gotta say positive towards them. Those will start up next Monday, my Lockdown show. We'll get some more of that here in a little bit. So, but in terms of this move here by the way, by St. Louis, going back to the Blues here with Doug Armstrong, giving him 5 years, and I'm not mad because obviously Doug Armstrong has shown that he is a solid general manager. However, this team is obviously heading towards rebuild. Now, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, the fact that they are really buying in that Doug Armstrong can lead this team through a rebuild and back into the playoff picture. I'm sorry, kids. I don't see the Blues making it out of the Central in a playoff spot. It's really hard, unless some team really hits the pooper this season, to see St. Louis get in there. They have talent. I'm not knocking them for that. But you're telling me Jordan Binnington's a guy? You're telling me Ville Husso is going to come in when Binnington falters? Their defense, I love Torrey Krug. He's a great player. Played for Michigan State. My wife loves that school, so I have to kind of like the guy, but he's a pretty good defenseman. He's not going to save their bacon. And the goal scoring, and obviously there's the whole thing with Vladimir Tarasenko, and there's still Ryan O'Reilly, but he's getting older. The Blues are going to struggle this year, guys. And obviously, Doug Armstrong is being entrusted with this hockey club to make the right decisions. Now, if Doug Armstrong is okay to stick it in there and hold it out with this team, it may work. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a rebuild that's going to last 5 years, or it's going to take them 5 years to try to figure things out with the St. Louis Blues. But at what point do you say to yourself, if you're Doug Armstrong, saying, all right, I signed on for 5 years, and a couple of these are just going to really be tough to be a part of? Because that is a great possibility. The team last year showed that they didn't even deserve to make the playoffs. The gap between the 3rd and 4th spot in that West Division between Minnesota and St. Louis was the furthest between any 3 and 4 in the NHL out of all the 4 divisions last year, as bad as the North was. You're telling me that Montreal and Winnipeg were that far apart? No, they were not. You're telling me that Oh crap! Who is 3-4 on the other side? Shoot. It wasn't Tampa. Tampa was 2-3. You're telling me Tampa and Nashville was that far apart? Not really. Nashville made it pretty close. I'm just saying that St. Louis is in deep doo-doo. They're in trouble. Big trouble. If they don't figure it out soon. Doug Armstrong's willing to be a part of it, I guess. He wouldn't have signed on for 5 years. Some other news coming around the league. Sami Niku, who, going back to Montreal here, he got put on waiver. He got bought out last week by the Winnipeg Jets. Comes in for league min with Montreal. 2-way contract. You never know with this team in Montreal. You may need a guy that you can bring into the lineup, in and out of the lineup, send to Laval, go back and forth, get his travel miles going. Obviously, Laval's not that far from Montreal, but just have a little bit more depth, a little bit more security, have a guy that's shown that he can play in the NHL on your defense core. Montreal needs it this year for sure. Cal Peterson got a really decent-sized contract given his stature in the league. Right-handed catching goaltender for the Los Angeles Kings gets 3 years at $5 million. Is he really that good? Listen, I get it. He plays on a bad hockey team, and we've seen, like Jonathan Quick, for example, when the Kings were bad there in his first couple of years, when he was wearing the very basic Vaughn pads and he used to walk out of the castle, he was pretty good, but he wasn't that good. Then again, the Kings weren't that good either. But then we obviously saw how good he was for a couple of years, and now we're back to square one with him. Obviously, the Kings are pegging him as their goaltender of the future, given the fact that they gave him 3 years at $5 million. Now, Jonathan Quick may play 3 more years. As far as I know, he doesn't show any signs of slowing down, but that doesn't mean he can stay in the lineup because, boy, Jonathan Quick has had some issues over the past couple of seasons. Can Cal Peterson be the guy for a long period of time? Obviously, they're hoping that the $5 million looks pretty small if the cap allegedly goes up $1 million each year, as Bill Daly said during NHL Media Week, or the Media Car Wash a couple weeks ago. So it could look good, but I don't know. The Kings, out of the California teams, yes, the Kings look like the best team. But it's literally saying like, oh yes, you may be the best team out of a pool of the bottom 3 teams in the division. I'm sorry, Anaheim, San Jose, LA. Yeah, you pick LA. There's a chance Seattle may go ahead of LA in the West Division. Pacific Division, excuse me. That's just kind of how far down the California teams are compared to the rest. I'm trying to think of a time when this has actually been true, when all the California teams in the league were bad. Like, even when the Gretzky Kings started to turn downward after the 93 run, the Ducks came in. They finished above the Kings, by the way, the expansion Ducks. 94 was when the Sharks made it to the second round. They also made it to the second round in 95 as well. 96. Oh, the Sharks make it 96? I'm not sure. Maybe that was the year they all missed the playoffs. Because 97, the Ducks made it. 98, the Sharks made it because of Mike Vernon. 99, the Ducks made the playoffs. 2000, the Sharks made the playoffs. 2000 was the year they started really getting good. Did San Jose. LA, I think, may have made it in 2000, 2001. I know LA did. They made it to the conference finals. No, second round, excuse me. Lost to Colorado in the second round. And then the Ducks came around, obviously, in 03. And then 06, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They made it to, I forgot how many years in a row the Ducks made the playoffs. But it's been a rarity, let's just put it that way, kids, when all 3 teams in California were bad. I think that's one thing that's kind of a thing we should kind of discuss here, is that not all 3 of them have been this bad since the Ducks came into existence in 1993. So with that, yes, I think LA is going to be the team that comes out of there, if there is a team to come out of California. And obviously Cal Peterson could be the guy. We'll have a wrong catching goaltender be a star in this league, kids. It's going to be great to see. Another guy to watch out for, at least in terms of the conversation, we talk about Jack Eichel. Brady Tkachuk is still unsigned, by the way, with the Ottawa Senators. I don't know. We talked about it last week. It's not as big as Eichel watch, but Tkachuk watch, I know there's some Ottawa fans here, and that's a big deal. If Brady Tkachuk doesn't come around board anytime soon, I'm not saying he's going to be missing a step. He's obviously skated this offseason, but he needs to be signed if Ottawa wants to be a competitive hockey club this year. Excuse me. Oh, gosh, there was an awful yawn right in front of you guys here on 12 Ounce Sports. I do apologize. I decided not to do coffee before the show today because I had coffee prior to my appearance on the Locked On Crosscheck podcast. So I thought to myself, I'll be good enough for the entire show today. And, well, I knew I was not going to make it the full 2.5 hours today anyways. This is probably only going to be going until 7:30 tonight. I do apologize. But listen, Brady Tkachuk's going to haul up for as much as he can. But yes, if you are Pierre Dorian, you are sitting in there thinking to yourself, all right, how can you make this work? Because eventually you have to sign Stützle. And we mentioned this last week too. I know we're going back at it, but the conversation has to be, all right, Pierre to Brady. Brady, I know you want money, but do you want to win here? If Brady does not want to be an Ottawa Senator, that's an easy conversation to have. Give him a couple more games, because I think at this point now he could get traded. That his ELC's done. Let him go. Or not let him go, but move him along. Move him to someone else that would want to pay top dollar for him. Unless you're trying to win. If Brady Tkachuk wants to be an Ottawa Senator, then make it work. And I think he should understand that as well. If he just in it for the money, then yes. Give him a couple of years or give him a year and boot him out of there and tell him it's the next guy's problem now. I'm sure everyone in Ottawa right now is saying to themselves, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? We can't lose Tkachuk. I say that now. I actually halfway going off screen now with this new kind of setup we got here. By the way, if you're listening to this, thank you very much. But if you're watching this and you say, oh, crud, I missed the interviews earlier with Cody Janzen and Chris King, it's okay. Don't panic. Don't panic. Make sure you check it out on the Keel Show YouTube channel or your favorite podcatcher as well. We're on all those. Staying in the province of Ontario, the Toronto Maple Leafs heard last week, as well as the Toronto Raptors, that they're going to be allowed 10,000 fans in attendance at Scotiabank Arena this season. They also added the fact that they're increasing the capacity at the Rogers Center in Toronto. That's two big things. One, because the Jays right now are before action starts tonight, they're one game back of a wild card spot right now. That is obviously, by the time you listen to this or watch this, that could totally change. But also the fact that for Leafs fans, where literally they only had one game with fans last season, the 500 there in Game 7, didn't help one darn bit. Worst game of the season. Now that they're going to have at least half capacity. And something, we mentioned this before, we talked about this during the playoffs last year, how loud it sounded. Even when there was 7,000, 8,000. Now, yes, there was the alleged 8,000 at the Bell Center during the finals. There was 15,000 people. But even in the earlier rounds, when there was only a few thousand there, when there was only 5,000 in the semifinals, against Vegas, it still sounded pretty loud. Let alone now be going to half capacity at 10,000 people at Scotiabank Arena. It's going to make a difference for this hockey club. Now, I know that people are asking, have you seen the All or Nothing documentary, the Toronto Maple Leafs documentary put together by Amazon? And listen, I'll be honest, guys, I'm going back and forth on it. I really don't know if I want to listen or watch it or not. And not because of the fact that I know how it ends, because for those that watch, any of those who watch the HBO 24/7 series they used to do for the Winter Classic, those were, they were pretty cool. They're really cool to watch. But also because you knew the ending, but it was intriguing. It was week to week. They put this all together in one big series after the entire season was over. And what I have received was a rated R version of the old blueprints they used to do. The Leaf blueprints they used to do. Now, I say that now, I'm like, Tyler, they still do them. It's like a web series. Well, what they used to do, the Leafs actually used to do a blueprint series on Sportsnet, if I'm not mistaken. It was on TV, and they were half-hour long episodes, and they were the 15-16 season was when, I think that was the real big year they had it, because I remember that year because that was the year Reimer was traded, Phaneuf was traded. That was the last year of the old core, if you will, prior to the young kids really getting called up, and they did a lot of cool specials. And from what I learned it was the fact that it was a lot of, from what I've heard from this All or Nothing, is that you learn a lot about Sheldon Keefe and how he has a big potty mouth, how Kyle Dubas had a sit-down meeting with Mitch Marner before Game 7 with the camera in there, and the fact that the team failed. But I guess some people say they wanted more. They wanted more from it. They thought the 24/7 series got a little bit more of a inside track than we saw with this series. I don't know. I may see it. I may have to get talked into it. I listen. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they're a franchise that has found a way to get good talent in the room, get exceptional talent in the room, all-star talent, and fail with it. Well, they want to point at specific reasons why they lost, how they lost, what should have happened, what could have happened. If Alex Galchenyuk doesn't turn the puck over, if JT doesn't get knocked out in game one, if ifs and buts were Kane, that's what all of a Merry Christmas. Heck, if someone shut down Patrice Bergeron or Matt Fratton doesn't take a double minor high sticking call in third period of game 7, the Leafs would have maybe gone to the conference finals in 2013. That's my thing, guys. It doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't click with my head. I don't panic, and I don't listen. I'll pull for the team. I pull for them. I'll watch them every single game. Hope they do well. And boy, if they win that big old silver trophy at the end of the year, awesome. I'll be so happy. It's so hard. I've talked to a couple people with this. It's like being a Michigan Wolverines fan in football. You hope the team does well. Sometimes they're talented enough, but they find a way to blow it in the end. But yeah, so you can go with at least Michigan's won a national championship since 1967. Yeah, I get that. Say what you want. Fact of the matter is, though, is that the Leafs they have the ability to do the thing. At what point do you realize that they have more growing up to do than we thought? You can't fast forward a rebuild. You can't push kids that are unprepared to be prepared right away. And I don't know. I really don't know. Am I looking at this too far in the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs are, I don't say not as good, but are the Toronto Maple Leafs similar to like the Washington Capitals? Like when they were winning President's trophies, when they were dominating the league and they could never get it done in the postseason. Is it just because this is the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Leafs who are this epitome of hockey and they need to win because this is the hockey city, the center, the mecca of hockey, and Washington isn't? Pittsburgh was not a hockey town until Mario Lemieux came on board. Until Eddie Johnson and co. decided to tank in 83-84 to get Mario Lemieux. That's my thing with this here. Is that there's so much expectations with Toronto that if they lose, yes, it is the worst thing ever. But if they win, it's the greatest thing ever. While some other teams have had similar failures, it has not been as hard on them as it has been for these teams in Toronto. Yes, was it easier because those teams actually won rounds? Sure, absolutely. But the fact of the matter is that these kids, I can say kids, because I'm younger than over half of this hockey club. I'm older, they're younger than I am. I am older than most of the players on the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. I can say kids. They still have to find a way to win, and they still have a lot of growing up to do. I don't expect Toronto to win this year. I don't expect them to win next year. When do you think they're going to win, Tyler? I don't know. I'm not going to go with the whole pigs fly route because guess what? Pigs aren't flying anytime soon. I don't know what kind of genetic nonsense some guys are cooking up in a lab somewhere in Siberia, but it ain't happening over here anytime soon. So with that, I don't know about the Toronto Maple Leafs. So yeah. And here comes the fun part of the show. So, like I said, next Monday will be my first podcast, the Locked On Capitals on the Locked On Network. Really excited about that. Got a good plug in there with Andrew Berkshire and them on the cross-check today. So I'm really excited to get that started. Monday will be the first one, daily content Monday through Friday, only half-hour episodes. So you'll hear about the same amount of me as you would in a typical podcast, because usually we do this for 2.5 hours. So half hour times 3, that's 2.5 hours. Yeah, I can math, kids, sometimes. But with that, this is the tough part. So, after much delegation, much discussion, I have decided that I have to step away from the Kuehl Show. Next week will be the last one. I'm not going to say last one forever, because that's too much. Because you never know. You never know what happens. You never know what happened down the line. Maybe things open up where I can do double time, which I would love to do. But that said, I am just not able to do everything right now. And so I'm going to focus on my Locked On gig. I'm really excited about that. The crew, they've been a big helping hand with that. Kylie and Sean and all of them, they've been very helpful, reaching out to me, make sure I can get everything set up well. Not going to do video for the first little bit, so don't worry. You don't have to see this ugly face when you jump on over there to @Locked On Caps. Locked On Capitals. But, yeah. Holy cripes. We've been doing this show, guys, for over 3 years. I say that like, oh, it's such a long time. And some people are like, dude, there's been shows that have gone on for 20 years. Yeah, I get it. But for a show that literally started because two kids got a couple Amazon gift cards from their family, from Grandma and from Grandma Tassel and Aunt Pat, we took the show. We started just doing 10-minute videos, 15-minute videos. And then we did a 45-minute video once. I think it was our Olympic preview. And we decided, you know what? I think we got to do a podcast. It's easier to do longer shows there. So you never know. Something may come around down the line, and I may go back to doing a podcast. It all just depends. You know what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen is I'll be doing the show with Locked On. I'll still have time at nights or whatever when Kelly isn't working or something like that, and I'll want to do a show. And we'll come back like Mick Foley does, what Mick Foley did in the year 2000. Retired 3 separate times, came back, still main evented WrestleMania that year. So we could totally be back in like 3 weeks. It'll be hilarious. But for now, the plan is to say goodbye here on the Kuehl Show. Next week will be the last one. We'll try to get some familiar faces on. Can't say who yet because I haven't reached out to them yet. A couple of them know that this was the plan, so I think they have an idea they may get asked. I don't think we'll be getting Alex on. We may get him to phone in. We'll have to get him to phone in because if I don't have Alex here, because Alex was here on day one and he was the host of day one for the first few years, and it's been different without him. I don't think there's any question about it. But, yep, really bad at these things. Next week's going to really suck. I think maybe it's because we get it out of the way this week that this is the last one. It'll be easier. Maybe I'll have someone with me to help me guide me home. But, so yeah, next week will be the last episode of the Kuehl Show. You're on 12 Ounce Sports and, of course, the podcast form as well. I mean, I'm not deleting the channel. You can still watch the old ones. You can... If you really are bored out of your mind, you can go back to see how bad our quality was back in 2018. When we were talking about you can't go back to the Washington Capitals one yet because that was when we were doing, we had a podcast. We went to the podcast forum. So if you go to your favorite podcatcher and you scroll all the way down to 2018, you'll see our reactions to the Washington Capitals when it's Stanley Cup. And also, the second time that the Toronto Maple Leafs lost to Boston in Game 7. Only the second time. The third time was fun, too. But if you really want to go back watch the old videos, I remember there was the Ohio State one, or the college hockey tournament preview one, when we were talking about the Ohio State Buckeyes. Their goaltender who had a pretty good year. I can't remember. Was it Sean Romeo? I think it was Sean Romeo was their goaltender at the time. I'm probably wrong, but... he was undrafted, and I remember my brother was like, of course he's undrafted. He plays for the Puke guys, and he flipped the bird off to the camera, and I just remember laughing. And I was stunned at first because we were shooting it we didn't have any software. Literally, the video was we would shoot it on my brother's phone. We'd hook the mics up into this phone, and then we'd take the phone when we were done recording, put it onto the laptop, trim it down to where we started and where it ended, and that was it. We couldn't cut it in the middle because we hadn't figured out video software yet. I know there's also the Kuehl podcast ones we tried to start doing for a little bit, Alex and I, when I would literally have to sync up the camera to the audio recording. That was always a nice 3-hour process. Took like 20 hours to get it uploaded because we lived in my grandmother's house, whose Wi-Fi was at about 1 megabit per second upload speed. That was great. It was fun. But yeah, those will still be there. All the old podcasts will be there. And so, yes, all those great episodes that I had back in the day, that we had back in the day, I can't say I had. Alex is such a big part of the show. Doing this show by myself is okay. I mean, talking to people and whatnot makes it easy. Bringing guests on weekly is fun. But it was always better with him. I think I can speak for that, and a lot of people that probably are listening right now are like, well, yeah. Now, some of you that probably are watching or listening that have only listened for the last couple months, they probably don't get it. Just go back to one of our old episodes. Half of it didn't make any sense, but that was not the point. We just had fun and talked about it, and yeah, maybe something to come down the line, but as of right now, this is it. Oh, man. Leafs and Habs are on right now. If you have NHL Network, go on preseason game and watch some hockey. I talked with Cody earlier. I'm okay with listening to preseason hockey and watching it, but I don't take much stock in it. I don't get too crazy about it. But that is it for now, as you guys know, the second to last episode of The Kuehl Show. Thank you all very much for watching this week's episode. Check us out at The Kuehl Show on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram for a couple more weeks. Follow me at TJKU29 on Twitter. See you next week, guys. It'll be the last one. Bye now.